Hello, guys. So today I want to welcome you to the dialogue. I am your host, Patricia, and I'm really excited about today's content. It is something that has been on my mind and on my spirit for a really good amount of time. But at the same time, it takes time sometimes. This word time is just everywhere. It takes time oftentimes to get revelation and insight in regards to some of the things and subjects that I'm going to talk about. So I'm really excited for today's insight. As you know, our mantra on this podcast platform is that we're healing souls one conversation at a time. So this subject today is really important to me for the simple fact that it is something that healing is centered around. It is something that the mind, the body, the soul actually needs in order to fulfill and maximize life as well as potential. So if you're wondering what I'm going to be talking about today I'm going to be talking about freedom, the capacity of freedom, the notion of freedom. And so I want to start from something that actually happened to me this weekend, and it is actually the inspiration for this specific episode. So this weekend, actually last week, I'm going to be 100% honest. Actually last weekend, about Wednesday or Thursday, I had been instructed by God to do something. I had moved to a new place, a new city per se, and God instructed me to go back to the place that I was prior to coming here. However, when I was in that place, it was so many bad things that happened to me. One of the main things that I think was just so devastating was that I was not living my optimal life. I was taking care of my needs, my daughter's needs. We were doing certain things, but the activities, there was not a lot to do. And life just started to dwindle away from me because I didn't see any hope or inspiration in this place. There were other things bad that happened. I mean, there were so many friendships or alliances with people that were actually leading into more captivity and more bondage. Because everybody that you deal with don't have good, pure motives for you. Some people come into your life because they have an agenda or a motive to use you, exploit you, or take something from you that's going to benefit them, but it's going to lead you into some type of captivity, and then that person will latch on to you. You can't get rid of them. And then it's just a whole slew of other things that will cause you to go into bondage. And so oftentimes I would meet people where I was living, we would say, hey, you want to start on a project? And then boom, before I knew it, God was stripping the project, and not only the project, but the relationship from me as well. That happened over and over and over and over. And it was extremely exhausting because most people know that I am a person about purpose. So if I could find people like, hey, you want to start a movement, you want to do this, let's go. We can go. And that was not what God was doing there. And so as time continued to go on and I would be stripped from these people, unfortunately, a lot of times they didn't know why I was being stripped from them, but I did. I was fully aware that God was separating me from these people because there was something in the middle ground that I wasn't able to see. And so this also happened at jobs. I worked at a couple of jobs where, just supervisory or, people that were over me felt a certain type of way, and it would cause them to try to withhold anything that would help me to advance. So this was an area, it was laced with a lot of intimidation, a lot of jealousy, a lot of competition. And it just got to the point where God secluded me. He secluded me. He put me by myself. And it was really uncomfortable because I had gone through that so many times. And then he relocated me. But it was so much trauma from those incidents that even though I started a new job, and even though I graduated from school, and even though I was in a new place, God was still dealing with me because he abruptly had me leave. I mean, he had been dealing with me for months, but you know how sometimes you're looking on social media, you could kind of find something that fits your situation. So I kept saying the same thing, but when it actually happened, I moved within like 3 weeks. I was like, oh my God. And it happened so fast. Like it was like a life or death situation. it was like a spiritual life or death situation, meaning that my spirit in this place was actually dying because I couldn't find people that wanted to encourage me or lift me up. I kept running across people whose agenda for me was actually attached to the devil's. But when you're a people person and you still have issues going on with yourself, you don't see everything clearly. And so last week, God was dealing with me and he told me to go back to this specific location for 2 days. Heard God clear and plain as day. And when it came time to go back, I was like, I don't want to. I went through so much there. I'm not going back. And so what happened was I disobeyed. And that morning or that afternoon when I woke up, it was like curses for disobedience. And it was like sickness, like he was talking about sickness. Now, mind you, the night before I started to feel sick. My body started aching. It was so many pains. It was so much going on. It almost felt like it was COVID, but it was on a whole nother level. So all I could do was lay around and try to nurture myself. And I said, oh my God, what had I done? Because God has clearly shown me to go back to this place. Now, it was even more ironic because 3 people had came to me. One person was like, do you think that you're going to have to move back? And I was like, we're not even going to talk about that. I don't even want to address that, right? Another person came. Are you thinking about going back? Because, you're trying this and you're trying that and you're facing some adversity. So are you thinking about going back? And I was like, well, I haven't been thinking about going back, but the conversation keeps coming up. And then I had put some posting up on social media in regards to graduating school and it being my birthday. Out of the blue, a random person was like, yeah, when you come back in town, make sure that you get a hold of me so we can link up. And I was like, okay. I left. I said, I didn't tell them that I moved because, mind you, I said when I moved, I didn't tell anybody. So I had no idea how they knew. And I said, what do you mean? And they was like, oh, I thought you moved. But the whole thing that I kept hearing the whole week prior to was going back. And I said, oh, no, I'm not going back. This is not what I'm doing. I'm not going back. I struggled so much there when I found out that I had to be there. Let me go in order. When God showed me that I had to move there, I didn't want to be there. As I was there, I was pretty much unhappy and depressed the whole entire time because I'm the type of person I like to get up, jump up, do, and go find something adventurous to do. The most adventurous thing for me to do at this location was go to the park. It was just nothing. And the park for me was a place of survival because it was so much greenery and so much life and just people having fun. That was the best thing that I could find to do. So I literally was going to the park every day, if not every other day, just to try to find some life. This is how deadly this place felt to me. You're in a place you can't find any connections. You can't find anything to do. There's nothing to look forward to. That's just like a hopeless, dead place to me. And that's what was going on. And so all of that, and those 3 people asked me like, are you going to go back or what have you? So like I said, I knew God told me to go back for 2 days. And I didn't do it because I was like, I fought so hard to get out of this place. It was like even a mental thing trying to get out because this is my thing. When you live in dead places and dead environments, it affects your hope and your faith. When you live in a place where possibilities are dried up, it affects your faith. When you live in a place or around people and all you hear about is death, doom, and gloom, and people getting sick and all types of things like that, it dries up your faith because those things are just an ending. You know what I'm saying? It traumatized my mind to see all of that going on or even hear about it. And to some people that was so normal, like, oh, such and such got shot. Oh, such and such died. It was doing something to me that this was the conversation all the time, And so Wednesday passed and then Thursday. And I knew God wanted me to go back. I was battling this thing so bad. So I repented. I said, Lord, forgive me, because I knew he wanted me to go back. I had no understanding of why. I even was reading the scripture and it was talking about how this lady had left the place and God called her back. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is really what we doing today. So long story short, Saturday rolls around and I'm a dreamer. Okay? A vivid dreamer. So I had dreamed I saw myself in my car. Well, actually, in the dream, I was in the car. I could see the speedometer. I could also see that I was coming out of one thing, about to enter something else new. But prior to me doing that, I had to go back. Like I had to turn around and go back to something that I almost missed. And that was when I almost missed going back. So the opportunity presented itself again. So I get on the road Saturday. And this time I took a whole different route. I didn't go the highway way that I normally go. I went a whole different route. And when I tell you, it was such of a delightful drive, and it was actually pretty fast, and it was actually pretty straightforward. And it was actually easy too, which was crazy because as I was packing that morning, my hands were shaking, my nerves was feeling all over the place. I was getting anxious and I was highly irritable because I did not want to go. And so I get there, a couple of things transpire. I had got my hotel room. I ended up going to get a pedicure, and I saw a couple people, and then God started dealing with me. He started dealing with me tough. And he was telling me a lot of the stuff that happened to me there, he knew I would forgive. And I was traumatized by that. Like, wow, all this stuff was able to happen to me because you knew I would forgive. There's a scripture in the Bible, and I believe it's Judges, where it's a woman and she's with this man, and they go into this city and she is totally violated. And no one basically stood up for her, and she was murdered. And they were asking, why was this allowed to happen? And that's exactly what I feel like happened to me in this place. I feel like I was violated so many times, treated bad so many times. I think, and I'm going to just be bold and say it, I think I was something new and I was something different because I wasn't from there. But you know how it can be for some people. You come, you bring in change. You bring in a different way of thinking. You're bringing a different attitude. You're bringing God because God wants some people to be mentally free and try something new. For some people, that can be a lot for them. And so when you have a group of 5 or 6 or 7 people that all think the same, all act the same, all do the same thing, it actually becomes normal. When a lot of times it's really not. And that's what I kept running up against. Everybody was just in a certain mentality and mindset. And so when he sent me back, I have been so broken in this place. I was so broken. But, I'm a funny type of person, and I could smile and stuff. I could make a joke out of anything. I could make anything a positive situation. I was doing the best that I could, but literally spiritually dying in this place. Literally, there was no hope for me or inspiration. That's what I felt like at the time. And so God sent me back to actually regather the pieces of me that were broken in that place, and I didn't know it. But when I got back there, I felt nothing like how I felt when I was there. The environment didn't bother me. I wasn't irritated. I didn't even think about anything that happened to me. It was like I was new. And nothing old affected me. And so I ended up leaving out Sunday. But prior to that, if anybody has ever seen that movie called The Grudge, it's a movie called The Grudge. And I think I watched it when I was younger. And it was a young girl, and she would crawl out of the TV or whatever, but she just looked so dead, and she had her hair was black and she looked wet. It was just very uncomfortable. And so I had a vision of that specific movie, and it was called The Grudge. And I saw the words over top of it. It said death defeated. And I was like, wow, I didn't fully understand it. But not that night when I saw it. But then I started to see that a lot of the people and interactions that I had was with people that were very bitter, very angry, very unforgiving. And what happened was, even if I did something small that wasn't that big, it offended them. And then it would cause them to launch out and either treat me a certain type of way or try to kill my spirit. And that's how I got violated. And so it was sucking the life out of me. And so I had to go back. When I got there, I was very lively when I first moved there. I was so much full of hope and optimism. I think I was a little bit naive too, to be honest with you. In a sense of, I'm the type of person, anything is possible. So as I stayed there, I really do believe that it was like death was trying to take over me. You know, most people know I had a traumatic experience with my pregnancy with my daughter. You know, I was running for my life for that. Different interactions, I was running for my life with that. It was so many different incidents where I just literally had to keep running for my life. I would start a job and then have to quit because people would see that I was capable. They wouldn't understand that when they hired me, that I was extremely capable. So I would get into the position. They would feel intimidated or have a superiority complex, and I would have to leave the job. I would have to continue leaving places because my spirit was violated. And you guys, I am not saying that it was violated like 1 or 2 or 3 times. No, I'm saying 70, 80. I stayed in this place for a 4-year time span. And every year I would say, I'm moving. Every year I would say I was moving. But then even that dream would get laced by death, and then I wouldn't. I remember the first year I was there, I said, oh no, I'll be out of here that next year. And I didn't. And then the next year I didn't. And the next year I didn't. And it just got really, really bad. I was just traumatized. I'll never forget that when it came time to finally get my license and they wanted to put this city on my license, of course, because I was there, I was living there. I was like, oh no, I didn't even want to get my license because I didn't even want to people. I didn't even want it to say that I was a resident there. And so as time continued to go on, God bought me out. He bought me out. But like I said, I was still traumatized from a lot of the encounters, still trying to move forward, still traumatized, still trying to go to school and graduate with my master's program, traumatized, you know, taking care of a family, traumatized, you know what I mean? Just all these different things, just traumatized. And the more and more that I started talking to different people, they have went through similar situations. I'm like, wow, they're traumatized too with some of the same things, you know? And so when he sent me back, it was like all of me, all the pieces came back together of the brokenness that I endured. And I became a whole person. I can't even explain it because it's supernatural. It's something that only God can do when you get broken, when he restores you. But he pulled me back together. When I got there, the first thing I did was roll past my first apartment. I looked in the area and I said, oh my God, you know, it just looked worse than what it did. You know, I didn't go past my second location. You know, I was past it when I went past the first one, just riding through the neighborhood. But it was important that I obey God to go back to come out. So I had to tell you guys that story for context because today's title is called Freedom. It's called Freedom. And so I'm going to say this first. Even as I was driving back, God always deals with me on license plates. Sometimes you'll see me upload something on Instagram or something like that. And it was a license plate that said peace. And that's exactly what I felt like driving. Just so much peace, so much joy, so much contentment from a visit, you know. And I don't even think that we stayed a full 24 hours because I want to say I got there about 2:30 or something of that nature and left out the next day about 11:30. But as I was driving back as well, I was looking over the land and, you know, when you're driving, there's a lot of woods and stuff like that and trees. And then sometimes you'll just have flat lands of grass or whatever. And for some reason in my mind, I was thinking about slavery. I was thinking about when slaves got the boldness and tenacity and the courage to say, if I stay in slavery, I'm going to die. You know, they're going to beat me, whip me, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But even if I take the chance to move, you know what I'm saying, take the chance to be free, it's still a possibility. But you see, slavery was an institution where people were dying daily. Their spirit was being murdered daily. You know what I'm saying? When they sang those hymns and those songs and stuff, it was from a sorrowful place, but they had hope. And I thought about the slaves, like, wow, it's the daytime. Look at over there, it's all those woods. But I couldn't imagine at nighttime when, you know, it's dark in the woods and it's snakes and all types of creatures and bugs, and you running and you might not have on no shoes or hardly no clothes, and it's 10 degrees and your feet are frozen, you know, and you don't know when your next meal is. You don't even know what area. You just following a North Star or a river. And that thing hit me as I was driving. And I recorded some footage about it because it was just a really somber moment. Like, wow, the audacity to want to be free. But when I thought about slavery, I did not think about myself as the person in bondage. I thought about myself as the one, like, I'm running to freedom. I'm the one that's going to be the bold one that's going to break out from all the other people that feel like they got to stay because they scared of the master. You know what I'm saying? And it touched me because it was like, wow, that's what I've been doing for so long. Running from things and people and situations and circumstances that's trying to tie me down to where I don't know who I am or my own identity or my purpose. And I had a person in my life and they would say things to me like, stop running. And it was years later and I finally got a chance to tell them, I'm not running for a bad cause. I'm running because I shouldn't be sitting still comfortable in certain things. Sometimes running is good for you, you know, because we think about fight or flight or fawn. You know, when you go through something traumatic, these are the responses that your body can go through. And I know for me, I'm quick to get rid of somebody, cut somebody off, or come away. Because if it means freedom for me, I have to get out. I'm meant to be free, you know. And so, like I said, as I was driving back, it was very interesting. And then I got to the house and I watched the movie Emancipation. Oh my goodness. I believe it's on Amazon Prime. That's the platform. So inspirational. It was a man, you know, and it was based on a true story. And I'm pretty sure we don't have the full depiction of what really happened to him. And I really don't want to do any type of spoiler alerts, but it was one specific scenario where the man was actually fighting off a crocodile in the swamp, you know, but he survived, you know, and it was other things he went through, but he survived. And all of this to say, no matter what your fight is to where you got to get to freedom, you have to, because sometimes it's so hard to think about freedom because your vision is so blurred. You could just see your current circumstances, whether if it's financial bondage, relational bondage, occupational bondage, whatever the difficulty or adversity is, you see your current circumstances. And you heard me say when I lived in that place, my current circumstances were dim and bleak. It was even hard for me to hold a job because the people thought the same. They were scared of something new or refreshing, you know? And I'm pretty sure it was other things, but I just noticed like this is what's in this area. You know, I keep going through the same thing in these specific areas. And it was a lot of dealing with the people and corruption and stuff. And I'm just not somebody that's going to stay under a business and work for someone that don't have a heart for people. So long story short, sometimes you're going to come out of a situation and your mind is still going to be warped. And then God is going to process you. He may send you back into it, and sometimes he may not. But whatever God decides to do or tell you to do, it's worth the freedom that you're going to get on the other side. Because as I've come back, trust me, everything is not in place and not in order. And I'm not going to be shy to tell anybody that, because somebody needs to know. But what is in order is my inner man. What is in order is my peace, my joy, my happiness, my optimism for new things, my faith, a new vision. And to me, those 4 years were, I'm not going to say the worst. I've been through other things, but this is beautiful to me. I see why slaves fought to get free. And now I see why I had to go through a lot of things that I went through, walking out of things and walking away from people and making sure that I kept my pathways clear to make sure that I stay free. I say all that to say no relationship is worth you losing yourself, losing your purpose, or losing God. You have to choose freedom. It is so much lightheartedness and joy, and it's just beauty in the atmosphere when you decide that you want to be free and not let someone take you over, possess you. I don't care if it's a job, because a lot of times jobs treat people as possessions rather than human beings. We're not robots. And all these years, I mean, we had a lot of generational curses that I had to break, a lot of issues, a lot of unspoken secrets. It was a lot of research. It was a lot of prayer. It was a lot of studying the Bible. It was a lot of consecration. Anybody that knows me, I'll be with somebody in a minute and then we won't talk anymore. Because it's so important. The freedom is so important, because when you have children, you don't want to pass your bondage down to them. And the beautiful part about it is it has turned into a blessing, a generational blessing. I'll leave it at that. But, I was sent a message and it was talking about, we talk so much about the generational curses. There are generational blessings. And for once in my life, all these years of hoping and praying and believing for a difference and a change, I finally have received inwardly first the blessing of expansion in my heart and my mind and my soul, of the possibility of what God is able to do. You cannot stay in a place of bondage. You can't stay in a place where people use you as the joke, or minimize you, or try to make you feel insignificant or unimportant, as if your passions and your desires don't matter. Because your passions and your desires, when they're given from God, a lot of times your purpose is attached to it. Now imagine this. I stay in this location and it's full of death, doom, and gloom, and I don't see any possibility. You live in a place, you don't see no thousandaires, no millionaires around you. Nobody living in the house, especially when it's, representation as far as my color, right? So if I don't see it for me, how's my little daughter going to be inspired? You know what I mean? If I don't see it for me, if I don't do it, how can she be inspired? And so it was worth the freedom, because now the mind is open and it's possibility, and it's so much peace, and all that anxiety and everything that was there is gone. It's gone, because you will enter into a space of just total blissfulness and peace. I'm going to end with this. I actually saw a video a couple weeks ago, and it was Chance. It was Tabitha Brown's husband, and they were in Vegas, and they had a small group of people. I don't want to say small, but a medium group of people that had attended a vacation with them to celebrate his birthday. And he stood up. Their life has changed drastically. They were from, South Carolina, and she had an accent, and she talked about her story in her books. Nevertheless, they asked this man, "Are you happy?" And, because their entourage has changed, money and fame do a lot to people, but it also does stuff to people around those people. You know what I mean? And he was looked, and he was like, "To you guys' question, yes, I'm happy." and was crying. And this came from a man. This man said that. And so I started to ask the question, is anybody I'm around genuinely happy? People are working jobs just to make it through. People are doing different things just to make it through. People are in relationships just to say they got somebody just to make it through. That's thriving. And there will be seasons that you might have to do that. But when you enter into that's surviving. But when you enter into thriving, it is totally different. It's like you get on like a altitude of like a plane and you're soaring. You're soaring. And when he said that, it put me in a whole different place. Like, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be happy. Ironically enough, when I moved, I was already crossing over into happiness. I had to go back to find out what happened to me in order to pull myself back out so that I can enjoy what is currently taking place and happening with me now. I hope something that I said in this podcast helps somebody. Your opinions, the way that you feel, the way that you process, the way of how you are, how you dress and think is so critical for the person that God said that you are. You don't have to stay in a place where you're not accepted, you're not loved, you're not valued, you're not seen. You don't have to. That's what happened when they were in slavery. They were used for whatever production. And this is why I think with a lot of black people, because, in slavery, they just literally had to keep working. They didn't care if they were sick. They didn't care if they beat them. And then the next day they had to get up, or 2 days later after their backs healed slightly, to go back to work. They had babies and had to go back into the field. They didn't care. That's what slavery is like. But freedom, you start to understand, I got to take care of myself so that I could be better. If you're a servant, you understand I have to serve from a place of healing and wholeness. That's what this journey was for me. I really hope that someone grasped the beauty of freedom, how important it is for us, but more importantly, how important it is for our children, our children's children, and the next generation. I really think that we're on the cusp of something marvelous, miraculous. I think it's already happening. Everybody enters into theirs in a different time. But my prayer is that eventually, whatever situation you're in, whether it be occupational, relational, locational, whatever, that there is, that you realize that there is a other side. There is another side. And if you are in a mode of surviving, that there is thriving available for you. If you are in a place of hopelessness, there is a place of hope and faith and possibility for you. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning into today's podcast. I am so excited. So it is my hope that something that was said in this podcast would ignite your spirit to think about the possibilities of the life that you want to live. And understand that it's possible. All things are possible. And I'm going to end this with a quote because I think it's appropriate. Freedom is the oxygen of the soul. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.